This ranger received a call to begin his day. He was astounded to see an elephant perched in a tree. The elephant refused to move when the ranger arrived, and he attempted to get it to leave. The ranger lost all facial color when he realized why. What did he witness, though? Why would the elephant not get down from the tree? Frank was checking on the fences surrounding the wildlife reserve by driving around its circumference, like he did each day. It was simply another ordinary day, but things would soon get intriguing when he received an odd call from a colleague. At first, Frank felt it was a joke, but after hearing his colleague seem so serious on the phone, he decided to give it a try. Frank's mouth dropped open when he saw his colleague after a brief journey. His concerns grew when he realized they were dealing with a baby elephant in a tree. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Was it separated from the herd? With no idea what to do, the two rangers exchanged glances with one another. Frank initially assumed that the baby elephant was stuck and was unable to descend. However, that was the first time that it had occurred. Frank and his coworker searched for an idea for several minutes before coming up with something. After getting some animal chow from the car, they would entice the baby elephant to come down. They really did just that. The elephant was shown the animal feed, and they gently urged it to descend. But the young elephant remained still. It was time to come up with something different. A few moments afterward, Frank recalled something. It transpires that a group of rangers was moving a rhino into the reserve on that particular day. That indicates that a crane was being used, which may be very useful if they were still on the job site. Frank and his coworker were both quite optimistic that this would work when they discussed it. They had no idea how the situation might change. Fortunately, the crane was still in reserve when Frank reached for the small radio to call headquarters. He was able to obtain the team's assistance by requesting their contact details. They eventually brought the crane, and after exerting some energy and working together, they succeeded in freeing the infant elephant from the tree. They all rejoiced when the animal was on the ground safely. However, something unexpected transpired after that. The elephant was being released by Frank and his companion, and as soon as it touched the ground, it fled back toward the tree and climbed up. It shocked everyone all around that the newborn elephant moved so quickly. This startled the entire team since, despite their initial belief that the animal was stuck, they were suddenly aware of its desire to be higher up in the tree. However, why? Nobody was able to comprehend it. Everyone was silent, attempting to piece together some sort of explanation, when an approaching SUV broke the stillness. It was a different ranger, and he had some terrible news. During the night, there was a break-in at the reserve. Frank sprinted to get his tablet, which gave him access to every camera feed. He then began to rewind the video on the appropriate camera. Subsequently, they witnessed it on camera, a bunch of poachers destroying the fence. It was peculiar, though, as Frank and his associates had examined the perimeter and found nothing unusual. Was the reserve still home to the poachers? Were they able to remove anything? Frank had to follow the poachers on the broadcast in order to get answers. But they were hard to follow, because the cameras only captured a portion of the reserve. Frank was able to locate the poachers in the video again with some perseverance and good fortune, and he observed them approaching an elephant herd. The poachers must have created a sound because the herd broke up and ran. Then, one of the coworkers came up to Frank and gestured at something on camera. It was the baby elephant, and the poachers were after it as it fled toward the tree. The poachers had surrounded the newborn elephant at one point. The baby elephant had enough time to ascend the tree when the circle abruptly broke and a female elephant appeared. However, that was not the end of it. The adult elephant caught the poachers' attention. It was then that Frank realized the poachers had lured the baby elephant because they anticipated the mother would attempt to assist. They were able to apprehend her and remove her from the reserve, proving that their plan had succeeded. Frank eventually realized why the baby elephant was refusing to leave the tree. They didn't feel comfortable and believed they were poachers. Keeping that in mind, he began to formulate a strategy. It was obvious that the mother needed to be rescued. They could also get the baby elephant to feel secure enough to come down from the tree once they had her. In an effort to obtain responses as soon as possible, they set to work and informed the police. A little while later, the police showed up, and the sheriff was certain who the poachers were. He had been attempting to catch them, but they were elusive, so he knew how they operated. The sheriff went on to say that the reason these poachers arrived so fast was because they had already broken into a number of neighboring areas. Frank informed the cops that everyone was prepared to help however they could. Since this was the first time they could go to the crime scene, the following day, the sheriff was fortunately optimistic. Because the poachers were skilled at hiding their activities, the police were typically contacted 2 days after they were first discovered. Plus, the poachers appeared to have struck twice, so there was a chance they would head back to the reserve that evening. It would be their opportunity to apprehend them. Thus, the rangers and the police began formulating a plan. The sheriff informed Frank that the poachers always constructed a fresh entrance, contrary to Frank's assumption that they would enter through the hole they dug the previous night. Frank had a look at the reserve's map and noted multiple locations, which coincided with the locations of the cameras. Both the police and the rangers deduced that the poachers would probably enter by the riverbank based on that knowledge. They could use the trees and other natural features there to capture animals. Thus, it was an ideal spot. To give poachers even more incentive to enter through the riverbed, they next began herding rhinos and elephants in that direction. In order to monitor the region and be prepared for the poachers, the rangers and police officers also made the decision to disguise themselves and disperse across the area. Everyone was in their assigned locations when darkness fell and the waiting started. Frank once noticed movement on one of the cameras at the fence as he was watching the live feed from the cameras. The poachers were close since that fence was right behind them. Frank kept an eye on the webcam feed and noticed the poachers approaching closer. The sheriff called, "Now!" as the poachers went by, and all of them leaped from their hiding places. The poachers were apprehended quickly after they were discovered. Their days of hunting were done. Frank and all the others involved were, as you may understand, extremely happy with the operation. There was only one way to locate the mother elephant. Frank called out to his colleagues, "Come on," waving them to follow him. The cops trailed behind the rangers as they got into their trucks and were driving. The poachers' camp was not far from the reserve, but the mother elephant was nowhere to be found and there were no cages. Were they left too late? Was it all for nothing, really? Frank was contemplating this when there was a noise. From behind the bushes, he could hear low breathing sounds and the rattling of chains. As Frank got closer to the bushes, he realized what they were concealing. He moved them as a result. It was then that he discovered the mother elephant's enclosure. It was a triumph. The animal was driven back to the reserve by the rangers as soon as they secured the cage to the truck. Now it was time to watch to see if the young elephant would leave the tree. They did not know what would happen as they brought the mother elephant to the beginning of that remarkable day. They were optimistic, nevertheless. The mother elephant cautiously emerged from the cage as they opened it. The baby elephant descended from the tree and quickly rejoined its mother. Frank said, "What a day," as he and his coworkers celebrated the joyous occasion. He was thrilled that morning, even though he had no idea how his day would unfold. They assisted in the arrest of the poachers, in addition to saving the mother elephant and reuniting her with her young. The sheriff expressed gratitude to Frank and the other rangers for their assistance and backing. He admitted that without them, the poachers would not have been apprehended by the authorities.